This is an instructional video on how to set up two 6-volt batteries to make one 12-volt battery bank to power a 12-volt inverter. What you see before you is a 4 battery bank that each battery is 6 volts, and there are 2 in series then connected in parallel to form a 12-volt bank. In order to power an inverter to operate a pump, say, for minimal use, occasional use here and there, like let's say you just wanted to run the pump for a little bit, you could just do 2 batteries, 2 6-volt batteries. You connect them in series and then connect the load, which would be the inverter, which the pump would be plugged into. So we'll focus on these 2. You would set it up as this is set up. You can ignore these 2 red cables because those red cables are connecting these 2 to these 2. And if you're just doing a 2 battery bank, you wouldn't have to worry about those. Those wouldn't be here. So all I have here is this black cable connecting, is jumping this negative terminal to this positive terminal. And then this negative terminal is connected to the negative on the inverter. And this positive terminal is connected to the positive on the inverter. It's exceedingly simple. In the case of a 4 6-volt battery bank connected to produce 12 volts, you would do the same thing. So you have 2 sets of 2, each with the positive jumped to the negative, and then you'd go from the open positive to the open positive, the open negative to the open negative. And of course, with a pump, you want to use a pure sine wave inverter. You don't have to, but for the sake of the pump, it's much better to. But in an extreme pinch, you could just run whatever you have. Here's an example of a jumper cable that I made using scrap material. I had these 2 operable large alligator clips, and I took a piece of this 2-wire with ground, Romex, just household electrical wire, and I have all 3 wires crimped into the alligator cables. So if one wanted to, they could make something like this and use it to jump the negative terminal to the positive terminal on 2 6-volt batteries to connect them to produce 12 volts across the positive terminal on the first battery and the negative terminal on the second battery. Now if you've connected these, this negative and this positive, right? If you've connected these as these are here, and then you connect this negative to this positive, what will ensue is a big fire. And the fire will continue to grow and be produced until those connections are removed. I know this from experience, and it's really scary. So don't do that. Other than that, I'll show you the solar component here. So this could be done, like right now I have this set up for a four battery bank, but it could be a 2 or a 4. If this were a 2 battery bank, these cables connecting the battery to the charge controller would be hooked in here where the inverter's hooked in. And so I have those two, negative, positive, going into here, the negative and the positive here. And you know, your charge controller might look different, but they're all pretty much the same. And then for the solar, on this 3-panel array, what I have is 3 panels that are each putting out approximately 44 to 48 volts at 4 amps. And I have them connected in parallel, so I have the positives from each panel connected together and the negatives from each panel connected together and running then into the positive and the negative on the solar input. Once again, I'm using Romex here, just household. It's, I believe, 16 gauge, 2 wire plus ground. But I'm using all 3 wires, all 3 copper wires in each strand to conduct the electricity to have maximum, just to have a decent amount of wire carrying the juice. Because this is a pretty decent amount of power coming out of here. Now for the equipment left in Alcee, for example, what I would probably do if I just needed to get some water out, I would probably hook up 2 of these 6 volts like I demonstrated, find a charge controller. I would take somewhere from 2 to 4 of these smaller, some of them are new in box in the carports, 100 watt panels. I would connect them in parallel, so all the positives together, all the negatives together, and I'd run that into one of the charge controllers, one of the bigger charge controllers that are around over there, and have that charge controller charging the 2 batteries. Once there's a decent amount of charge, I would then use it to power an inverter, and I would run the pump. So, I mean, given what's there, one would have to kind of cobble together the equipment with the electrical cord that's laying around and various materials that can be found. Car jumper cables are great for just making quick connections between the batteries. There's a couple inverters in the house. There's at least one pure sine wave inverter there. It was in the bedroom. Charge controllers are probably out in the carport. There's extension cables around. Trying to think if there's anything else. One of the issues you could find dealing with this is with the solar panels that are there. They're not all the same voltage output. So if you just use the smaller 100 watt panels, those are all the same output. So you can use those together. And basically how many you use at once is only limited by the amp capacity of your charge controller. But there's there's 30 amp controllers there. I believe there's at least one 60 amp controller or 50. Just says right there on the box. There's also one of these guys here, new in one of the bins in the carport, in case you need to test some powers. The other thing, I shouldn't forget to say, this is important. When you go to hook up the panels, make sure you cover them before you make the connections, either to each other or into the box. So what I would do is just set them up and then I was using this blanket here and that rug over there, and just cover them up good so that they're not producing any power, and then make all your connections, including the connection to the box. The box should have a display because the box will be connected to the batteries and the battery will be powering the box. At that point, you can, once all the connections are good, make sure you're not mixing any negatives and positives, because that could blow the equipment. Once you're sure everything's good, and make sure you connect the batteries properly, negative to negative, positive to positive, because if you don't do that, it could blow the equipment just by itself. So once you're sure everything's good, then you can remove the coverings from the panels and operate your equipment. I hope that helps. If there's anything unclear, you're welcome to contact me with any questions. I'll leave it with a shot of this 2 battery bank.